The moons of Karath 7 hung low in the violet sky, casting long shadows across the crystalline forest. Sergeant Lyra Voss crouched low, her breath misting in the frigid air as she counted the glowing eyes circling them in the darkness. 12, maybe 15. The Vraken hunting pack had found them. Behind her, 4 Karath cubs huddled together, their fur bristling with terror. The smallest one Tor pressed against her leg, his tiny claws digging through her combat suit. His people, the Karath, were apex predators on most worlds, standing nearly 3 meters tall when fully grown, with razor-sharp fangs and claws that could shred durasteel. But these were children, barely a cycle old, and they were prey tonight. "Stay behind me," Lyra whispered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The universal translator at her throat rendered her words into the clicking, growling language of the Karath. The Vraken circled closer. They were nightmares given flesh, quadrupedal beasts with obsidian scales, multiple rows of teeth, and a hunger that was never satisfied. They were what the Karath had evolved to fear, the ancient enemy that had nearly driven them to extinction before they developed tools and fire. Lyra had been sent to Karath 7th as a diplomatic military advisor, part of humanity's outreach to species joining the Galactic Coalition. The assignment was supposed to be safe, ceremonial even. Then the Vraken migration had come early, and she'd found herself evacuating a nursery facility with only these 4 cubs and no backup within 100 kilometers. The largest Vraken, a scarred beast with one milky eye, stepped forward. It opened its maw and released a bone-shaking roar that echoed through the forest. The sound was designed to paralyze prey, to flood their systems with terror and make them easier to hunt. The cubs whimpered. Tor began to shake uncontrollably. Something ancient stirred in Lyra's chest. Not fear, something else entirely. Humans had been prey once too. Tens of thousands of years ago. They had been weak and slow, with no claws or fangs worth mentioning. They should have been erased from existence by saber-toothed cats and dire wolves and cave bears. But they weren't, because humans had learned to snarl back. Lyra rose to her full height, pitifully small compared to the Vraken, barely half their size. She had her pulse rifle, but ammunition was limited. She had a combat knife. She had her body, already bruised and bleeding from the 3-hour flight through the forest. That was all. It would have to be enough. "You want them?" Lyra's voice cut through the darkness, sharp and clear. She didn't roar. Humans didn't need to. "You go through me first." The Vraken pack leader cocked its massive head, confused. This tiny soft-skinned creature should be running, should be screaming, should be dying. Instead, Lyra bared her teeth, those flat, omnivorous teeth that seemed so useless compared to the fangs surrounding her, and she growled. It wasn't the multitonal subsonic growl of a Karath. It was the sound of a human cornered, a human protecting something precious, a human who had decided that this ground, this moment, was where the line would be drawn. The Vraken attacked. Lyra's pulse rifle sang out 3 times, dropping the nearest predators in bright flashes of superheated plasma. The pack scattered, then regrouped, learning. They were intelligent hunters. They split up, trying to flank her. She moved with them, keeping her body between the cubs and death. Her rifle barked again, again. The power cell depleted with a whine that sounded like a death sentence. A Vraken lunged from her left. Lyra pivoted, drawing her knife, and drove it into the soft tissue beneath the creature's jaw, as its momentum carried it past her. The blade stuck. The Vraken thrashed, and Lyra lost her grip on her only remaining weapon. She was unarmed now, bleeding from a dozen scratches, exhausted. The pack sensed victory. They moved in. Lyra didn't retreat. She couldn't. There was nowhere to go, and the cubs were right behind her. So she did the only thing that made sense to a human who had descended from persistence hunters, from creatures who had conquered an entire planet through sheer, bloody-minded refusal to quit. She charged, her fist connected with the scarred pack leader's snout. Bones broke, hers mostly, but the Vraken reeled back in shock. Lyra grabbed a fallen branch, thick as her arm, and jagged at one end, and swung it like humanity's ancestors had swung clubs against mammoths. The branch shattered against scaled hide, but it bought her seconds. Behind her, she heard something unexpected. Tor was growling. The tiny cub, who had been paralyzed with fear moments ago, had stepped out from behind her. His growl was thin, reedy, pathetic compared to the sounds the Vraken made. But he was trying. The other cubs joined him, their voices growing stronger. The Vraken hesitated. These cubs should be cowering. This human should be dead. Nothing about this made sense to their predator instincts. Lyra stood her ground, blood dripping from her hands, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She met the pack leader's eyes and showed her teeth again. "I'm human," she said quietly. "We don't know when to die. We don't know when to run. We're too stupid to be afraid of things that should kill us." She took a step forward. "So come on, let's find out what scares you." The Vraken pack leader stared at this impossible creature. In its long life, it had killed hundreds of prey animals. It understood fear. It understood the relationship between predator and prey. But this human, this small, wounded, fragile thing, wasn't acting like prey. She was acting like a rival predator defending her territory. More than that, she was acting like she'd already decided she would win, even if winning meant dying while taking as many of them with her as possible. The pack leader made a calculation. These cubs weren't worth fighting something that refused to accept its place in the natural order. With a low growl, the Vraken turned and melted back into the shadows. The pack followed. Lyra's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, shaking with exhaustion and relief. Tor rushed to her side, his small body pressing against her arm. "You snarled," he whispered in his language, his young voice filled with awe. "You snarled at them and they left." Lyra managed a tired smile. "Sometimes," she said, wrapping one arm around the cub, "the scariest thing in the forest isn't the biggest or the strongest. It's the one too stubborn to know it should lose." Above them, the moons continued their ancient dance. In the distance, rescue shuttles were finally approaching, their lights cutting through the darkness. Lyra held the cubs close and allowed herself, just for a moment, to stop being the predator and simply be tired. But in that crystalline forest on Kareth 7th, a legend had been born. The story would spread through the galactic coalition of the human who stood alone against a hunting pack, who protected children that weren't her own species, who snarled back at the darkness. And the galaxy learned what Earth had known for millennia, that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their strength. It was their absolute, unshakable refusal to surrender when something they cared about was at stake. Even when surrounded by teeth and claws and certain death, a human would plant their feet, bare their teeth, and dare the universe to try and make them move.